Got it. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and potential Toastmasters. Welcome to today's show, Wake Up with Toastmasters. I'm your District 115 Club Growth Director. And with me today is my co-host, Distinguished Toastmaster, past District Governor, Phyllis Tribby. Good morning, Phyllis. How you doing?
Good morning, Ken. I am alive, well, and doing excellently. Good morning to our public out there. How are you today, Ken? Got a set up on Facebook, have you?
Yeah, just checking making sure that our Facebook feed is working, and it is. We are live on Facebook. So if folks want to join us and put in some questions, we'll be happy to answer them. As hopefully our viewers know, we've been going through a series of the past few sessions on club officer roles and talking about some of the specifics of those roles. And so today we're going to continue with that series, and our topic for discussion today is the club secretary, which happens to be one of my favorite roles. I don't know why. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. But I understand, Phyllis, that's not your favorite role. Why is that?
It is not my favorite role because trying to take notes, listen, be part of the meeting, it just it doesn't work well for me. I usually have my head down writing something, so I'm no good at writing with my face up, looking at the camera. I'm usually looking down, and I find that I miss things. So no, during the business meeting, it's okay. But during the regular meeting, I seem to miss things, and I don't like that.
Well, I can relate to that because there are certainly times you get so wrapped up in a presentation, or into an evaluation or to a table topics or discussion that you forget you need to write stuff down. And I have all of these little prepared lists that I can just check off as to who was called on for table topics and all of that stuff. So over the years, it has been a little easier, and maybe that's why I keep getting elected to that role. I do have these checklists, and as you may probably mentioned before, I have been the district secretary. They call it administration manager, three times. Yeah. Twice in District 115 and once in District 33. So I've sort of gotten used to some of the roles and responsibilities, and some of the things that people don't realize that are the responsibilities of the secretary we're going to talk about today. So let me pull up of course, the PowerPoint.
Of course.
There's always a PowerPoint, or almost always, I should say. There we go. The club secretary. Let's just get right into it. We'll talk about this. One of the 7 great roles, right? Because there's 7 officers. So every role is great. So this is one of the 7 great roles. Secretary is club custodian of records, the 5th ranking club officer. So if everybody else is out for the day, the secretary presides at the meeting. I can't ever remember that happening in my 15 years or so, where all of the vice presidents were out and the presiding officer role fell to me as secretary. But somewhere along the line, I'm sure it has to have happened. In any event, custodian of records. We'll talk a little bit about what that means and how that impacts the club secretary. But I will tell you a story. When I first became secretary, I got a box from the outgoing secretary filled with old minutes and other documents. And I was like, because our club started in, was it 1979? Early risers in my home club. And I was going through this box, and there were some old newsletters. We used to have a club newsletter. We don't have that anymore. But it was pretty amazing to go back, and I knew a lot of the people who over the years had they were members of the club for a period of time, and then they weren't. But that's what custodian of the records means, is finding a way to preserve those records. And of course, now everything's online, and you can attach your minutes to like Free Toast Host and store them as part of your website and give access to them to your members. When we first started in the electronic age, Free Toast Host was not very good. It was rather a cumbersome website to use. So instead of that, we used Dropbox, which is another alternative. But over the years, Free Toast Host has gotten really, really good. I think it's improved so much. It's a great tool, particularly for the secretary. So let's move on here. Excuse me, my allergies this morning. I think from all that wind that we had.
Dust in the air.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a little better today, I think. But let's look at some of the key responsibilities that the secretary fulfills. First, take and distribute club meeting and executive committee minutes. And the way we do it in our club, you can, as I said, use as your template the agenda that's in Free Toast Host, as long as you go back and fill in or change roles. Because what happens sometimes is someone who's assigned to be timer, let's say, has a last minute change of plans, they're unable to attend, so you have to assign someone else. Well, unless you go back in and change that role on the agenda, they're sort of forever, excuse me, locked into that role. Any other tips you have on that? Do you use that at all when you're in the role of secretary?
Absolutely. You go back and you can edit what's on there. I think you have to be given access to editing, but I think that's a possibility by your administrator or whoever it is that's on the website administration, and go in and they tell the website which of the officers are allowed to edit the agenda. And the secretary is not automatically able to, but they can be assigned so that they can go in and edit the agenda that's for the week. Yeah,
and really the secretary and the VPE are the two that I think most need to have access to do that. So taking the minutes and distributing them for both the club, maintaining the roster both on your TI and your website. So it's another reason to make sure the secretary has access to your Free Toast Host website, is they're usually the ones that are going to go in and update. Not always. Now, some clubs have a separate website administrator that takes care of that. But for example, if you sign on a new member, you have to go in and send them an email through the website where they accept the invitation to join the website. And I know as club secretary, that has often fallen to me, but that's not universal in every club. It's more common that you do in the TI website under Club Central, go in and maintain the roster, make changes. If somebody moves, gets married, changes their name, what have you, then you would do that. If it is another person, the secretary should still make sure that it happens and that isn't something that's forgotten, because if you don't update, particularly your website, any of the messages they send out to your members is not going to get to that person, or to if they've changed their email address or something like that. So you got to keep that up to date. I think that's very, very critical. Submit the club officer list to TI. This is very, very simple. Again, you go through Club Central to do that, and just make sure it's up to date. If you have any changes mid-year or during the Toastmasters year, or the election cycle, because as you know, some clubs elect officers every 6 months, others every year, then it's the secretary's responsibility to make sure that the list is updated and properly submitted to TI. And of course, you get points for that through the Distinguished Club Program. And these are what I think of as, slam dunk kind of points. You got to get those, get your list of officers in on time, get all of your payments in on time. And those are the easy things that you can do administratively. The more challenging thing is to make sure that your club is moving forward on its other goals, the membership growth and educational. So that's much more of a challenge to me. Manage any correspondence and club records. Now, this is something that I don't see too much of. We don't get a lot of correspondence, so there's not much there, but maintaining the club records, as I said, can be a challenge. Knowing how you're going to store them, where you're going to store them, how you're going to make sure they get passed on. And I know in talking to other clubs that a lot of times the records do get incomplete. They'll have pieces missing, particularly, we forgot to file this or that or the other. So it's a challenging thing to manage all of those records and keep track of them. And this is something that a lot of secretaries don't realize. You, as secretary, are the backup base camp manager. Of course, the VPE is the principal base camp manager who goes in and signs off on completions in pathways and what have you. But if he or she isn't around, it falls to either the president or the secretary. Were you aware, Phyllis, when you were secretary, that this was one of the responsibilities?
Absolutely.
Well, that's good.
I tried to learn as much as I could about base camp, but what I found was, it's action. You have to go in and do it. Not only take care of your own personal ones, but go in and look around and see what's there. You learn by doing, in my estimation, for anything on pathways. Well, I think anything in life, you learn more by doing it than by hearing about it. So people should not be afraid to go in and look around. If you are the base camp manager, the backup, go in and look around. It doesn't hurt. It's a stable website. It's not going to disappear if you do something crazy. And if you get to a point where everything is aggravating you, leave the website completely and it'll disconnect everything. Log back in and try again. Don't just stop because you're frustrated. Try it again.
Well, absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because sometimes people seem a little bit intimidated by the website and afraid to go explore. And you're really not going to break it. Hopefully, that whoever the prior secretary was, whoever you're replacing or taking over for, will spend some time with you going over base camp so that it increases your comfort level. And as I always like to say, it's not always possible. We always try to prepare our successor, to have someone like, you may not give them the title of assistant secretary, or you might, but someone who can fill in for you when you may have to miss a meeting, but also who knows along the way exactly what that role is. And if things are working well, that person is going to run for that office and become your club secretary in the next cycle, whatever that may be. So that's, I think, one of the things that we need to put more emphasis on is creating succession and preparing new leaders to move up to club officer roles and to district leadership roles. Now, the other thing I want to just mention here that maybe people are not aware of, but the secretary is one of the people from the club who votes at the annual meeting in August, at the TI annual business meeting. The other one is the club president. And this is a little bit different because on the district council, at the district level, it's the club president and vice president of education. But when it moves to the annual business meeting, it's the president and the secretary. I'm not sure why they did it that way. Are you, Phyllis? I was like, okay. But this is something that when I look at the training materials, isn't emphasized as much as I think that it needs to be.
Hasn't this been a change in maybe the last, say, 3 years?
You know, it could be. Yeah, it could be. It could be a change that I made sure, because being a secretary, I'm like you. I try to make sure that I covered everything that I'm supposed to do, and I discovered, oh, I'm supposed to be voting at these meetings, and they're usually online meetings, so they don't expect that everyone's going to be able to go to Nashville, which is where we're holding it this year. But I think it's important to talk to your predecessor and make sure that you have gotten the skinny on where we are, and that you vote on behalf of your club with your club president. Those are the two things that probably have changed more, being the base camp manager and voting at the annual meeting, that haven't been emphasized sufficiently. And I know when I teach the class for a club secretary, I make sure that we do go over that. Now, before the meeting, there's some things that you want to do. Some of them we talked about. Post the previous minutes or send them out, however you do that. Now, we still can do it a couple of ways. And what I like to do is I fill out, my minutes. I have a template that I use, and I fill those out. It's really, because it's got a lot of pre-filled out stuff, it's very easy to do. So I make it a point, if I'm the club secretary, to get that done the day of the meeting, shortly after the meeting ends. And I send it out through our email system to all my club members, asking them to look them over and see if I made any mistakes, and then you could post it on your website. But I think that's important to distribute and get people in the habit of looking them over, excuse me, and then making sure they are part of your permanent record. If there are any actions that you're aware of, I think all club officers, for example, let's say the BPM membership we've talked about, if we have new members, we want to make sure they get on the agenda to be inducted. We want to make sure that they have scheduled for new member orientation, whether that's an orientation provided by the club or through the district. As you know, we have on the second Saturday of every month, we have educational enrichment night and innovation by our program quality director, Gene Williams. And two of the classes that are given every month are new member orientation and a basic introduction to pathways. So that may be something you need to remind the president, hey, we need to make sure we induct our new members. We need to make sure we get them scheduled. So make sure the president is aware of those things that need to be done for the club. We talked about updating the club officer list and other things that you can do during the meeting to enhance the club experience. Circulate an attendance book. Now, we don't do this quite the same way online anymore, right? I know we used to have, my club is, I'm in two clubs. One is meeting in person and one is still just meeting online. And online is different. When you have a guest, I ask for it, whether I'm secretary or VP of membership, if I ask for their email or contact information so that I can follow up with them. And so I don't actually get them to sign in, but hopefully I have some contact information so we can follow up. Now, I know your clubs are still pretty much online, right? You're meeting in person or online?
Actually, both of my clubs are hybrid. So we have places, but we continue to do Zoom because we have out of the city members. We have a member that's in Carson City. So what we usually do is ask the person if they would be willing to share their contact information in the chat. If they put it in the chat to everyone, then I take and I absolutely put that on my minutes sheet so that their email address is always available. All you have to do is just go back a few weeks to find it. So I just
Absolutely.
have that available.
Now, so I know you and I have discussed before having a guest packet that is virtual.
Yes.
Since your club's hybrid, do you also prepare a guest packet that's physical in case you have visitors in the room? The real room, not the Zoom room.
That's it. As say, we do get lax. There's just no doubt about it. We have one time in Holistic won the award for the best guest packet.
Nice.
Does anybody have a guest packet when they go into club? No. It's, you have to get back in all of those habits again. We've got lax. We do have some information that we can send out email, but as far as handing one out in person, no, and it's a shame.
Well, just pre-pandemic in my club, I was the sergeant at arms. So I had, my little kit, if you will.
Yeah.
And in it, I usually kept around 4 guest packets, physical guest packets that were, had a magazine. When we used to have physical magazines, remember those days?
Yes.
I had an application. I had a couple of the Toastmasters brochures. So I had those all made up and ready to go. And when we thought we were going to go back to in-person meetings, we went to hybrid for a while, and it didn't really work as well. So the club decided to stay virtual for the time being, and now we need to look for a new location. So I gave all of that to my successor, who had also been a sergeant at arms before, so he got all of that. But those packets have been sitting there for 2 years.
Well, I am sure that if Guy Dawson went through all the material that he's toting around, he would find some guest packets. But you don't always have that in your trunk. A lot of times you carry it and store it someplace, and unless you think you're going to need it, you leave it there.
Yeah.
But we ought to have a discussion one day about hybrid clubs, whether we think they're working or not.
Well, I think you're right, and I think for us, it didn't work very well. We decided to give it a try, and we went back to our physical location and set up hybrid, but we didn't really get the attendance. So we went back to online only. Yeah, but I see, like,
that's it. It's like there's not enough people in either direction.
Yeah.
To, make a club, and so you're hybrid and you're in person, but there's only 1 or 2 people showing up. That doesn't say much to the guests because maybe there's 5 people online. So yeah. I don't know. We'll have to discuss it.
Well, I'll tell you, just to sort of briefly share with you my experience is what I've seen throughout our district is we're moving into sort of 3 different models. One is strictly in person. And an example of that is one of my clubs, Bon Appetit, where we were offering hybrid and our online attendance decreased until we made the decision, okay, we're going to go strictly in person because it's just a lot of trouble to set up a hybrid meeting. So we are in person. The other trend I see is there will still be some hybrid meetings that because they've acquired members from around the country or around the world. They will transition to hybrid, and then we'll have a third group of clubs that will be strictly online. So that's kind of my prediction of what our meetings will look like going forward. Now, one of the things I want to talk a minute about is if you follow Robert's rules and what have you, it says you're supposed to read the previous minutes at a meeting. Nobody really does this. And that's why I wanted to point it out, because we had some folks who were reading the descriptions online. I think the more efficient way to do it is to what we do is we send them out to our members and say, please review these. If there are no corrections, they will be adopted at our next meeting. So that way, you are putting the burden, although it's a small burden, on your members to be proactive and to look at those minutes and say, hey, you missed XYZ or you got this wrong. Because I don't think anybody, and most of the clubs don't have time to read the minutes from the previous meeting, literally reading them. Is that your experience as well, Phyllis?
Absolutely. The secretary's report goes that they're approved and attached to the agenda.
Exactly.
And that's my secretary's report. Unless I'm asked, well, when the president goes in and asks for old business, I think it's up to the secretary to tell what the old business is, if there was something left over.
Yeah, something that was unfinished that needs, particularly in an executive committee meeting.
Mhm.
And then, of course, record the current meeting minutes. And then outside the club, we talked about maintaining the roster, submitting the list, handling any correspondence, which there really is very little.
Yeah.
The main thing is making sure that, and the reason I can say this is in my club, I've been the secretary and the VP of membership. So what had kind of evolved is if I'm the secretary and the VP of membership is out, I make sure that I let him know, okay, I'm going to follow up with this guest and I'll send them the packet and information and make sure they're copied on that. So the VP of membership knows that there was follow-up, that we didn't drop the ball somewhere. Because so many times I think we have a guest, we need to make sure to the extent possible, like we talked about, you get their contact information and you follow up. Exactly. There's my next bullet point, follow up with guests. And then keep any club files and prepare them and pass them on to your successor. And then attend the executive committee meetings. As we've talked about before, some of the roles that you have to do are vote at the international business meeting. And you really can't vote on behalf of the club unless you attend the meetings, particularly executive committee meetings, and discuss what the issues are before the international meeting. Facilitate member progress at base camp, we talked about that. Arrange for a replacement or an assistant. That's the best thing, is to have an assistant who is going to be your replacement down the road. And that way, you are mentoring them for the entire year of your tenure. So I think that's the best way to do it. If I could, create a perfect world, that's the way we would do it in every club at every level, whether it's like in district leadership or in club leadership. So we're moving a little bit slower today, and I'm sure that's my fault because I'm talking. So I'll go through some of this.
It's your sore throat.
Yeah. Well, it's more allergies. It's not really sore, but I'm just sneezing and congested. Okay, so we talked about the executive committee. All of the officers are part of that. You can see our 5th ranking officer, the secretary, and part of their role is to make sure they take the minutes at the executive committee meeting and distribute those minutes, because there it's a little bit different. You're doing things like working on your club success plan. So you want to make sure that plan is worked on by the executive committee, finalized, and then distributed so that everybody has it. And the tracking that you do with the Distinguished Club program should also be a part of that. So you might want to read, again, you're not going to read probably the previous minutes, but distribute them and ask people to read them and advise you of corrections, note any corrections. Record the current meeting minutes. Definitely participate in the Distinguished Club program, Club Success Plan, and any special events. Sometimes I think we forget that part of what the club should do to increase their membership is hold an open house, have a membership drive, participate in contests. Contests for me, I love contests, as you know, but it's one way to learn what goes on outside of your club. We sort of get boxed into our club meetings, and that's great. But I think true leadership opportunities, once you've been a club officer, is to move on into district leadership, where you get even more opportunities. And contest is one way to open that door. What do you think about that, Phyllis? Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that maybe it is the secretary's work to know who was a guest previously and invite them to the open house. I keep a list online, of course, of all the people that have visited, and then I can send them information. I previously have sent out information to people that have wanted to join a Toastmaster group but have never appeared at our Toastmaster group. And I thought, well, I've got their name, I've got their address. Now send them an email and say, we're now, in person. If you wanted an in-person meeting, please come and visit. So yeah, the secretary can help with, like you say, the membership drive. All of these officers work together to help one another and to back up one another.
I think that's a good point, because and each club may have a little bit different. As I noted, the secretary or the VP of membership may follow up with guests. And in some clubs, the secretary also orders all club supplies. In my club, that happens to be the treasurer, so she's going to be paying the bill.
Not the cash.
Yeah, she's got the bank account, but it may be different from club to club. So secretaries may order supplies in some clubs. In other clubs, it may be the treasurer with input from other officers, particularly the sergeant at arms who's carrying supplies. So actually, I think that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point and sort of wrap things up by saying that the secretary's role is a vitally important role. And some people do find it challenging and maybe a bit intimidating. But I think the key to overcoming that is to make sure you have good succession planning. I attended a webinar last night, actually a Toastmasters webinar. And one of the things that we talked about was leader recruitment and succession planning. And those are probably the areas where we don't universally do that as well as we could. But that's something that each of us needs to work on, both at the club level and at the district level. So my advice to our viewers is, don't be afraid to say yes to serving as the club secretary. There are lots of people out there who will help you. There's lots of opportunities to learn the role, particularly through the TLI. And we are going to have 3 different TLIs this year. We're already scheduling. So I'll let people know it's in the newsletter, the most recent newsletter, but we will have 2 opportunities in June. So I want to see the right date here because I don't want to get them confused. But the first one is going to be like the early bird we did last year. This is another innovation that Gene brought to our district, which is really very, very well received. And the early bird is going to be on June 11th. This is a TLI for people who have been in the officer role over the past 6 to 12 months, and they have taken the previous TLI. So we have a little bit different curriculum for those in that group. Then we're going to have an in-person TLI on the 25th of June, and then another strictly online on July 9th. Also upcoming that I want to remind everyone, we have divisions A and B. The divisional contest is coming up on April 23rd. That'll be at Palo Verde High School. Divisions C and D will be on April 30th at the historic 5th Street School. And then, of course, our district convention and meeting will be on May 14th. You do need to pre-register for that because we have a limitation on how many people can attend. It's at 100, which sounds like a lot, but we have a pretty robust membership, not as big as we'd like, but certainly engaged. So if you haven't registered, please do so. And if you need the link, it's in the newsletter, or you can send me an email. And I know that Jennifer is getting ready to send out some announcements that will include that link as well. So we have lots of wonderful, wonderful events coming from the district, and I hope everyone can attend them. Anything else, Phyllis, before we sign off? We're about 5 minutes over what we usually allocate, but I don't want to rush
when we say limited, we've got to remember how many people attended at midnight when we became District 115. So this district is supportive. Get your registration in early.
Absolutely. We also need to make sure we have an accurate count, because there will be, there's going to be a continental breakfast, there will be a lunch, we'll have the district level contest for evaluation and international, we'll have several keynote speakers and educational opportunities, and a banner parade.
There you go.
Banner parades are really tough to have online, so this will be our first in-person District 115 banner parade and convention. So hopefully everyone will be able to join us. All right, well, so we will see you again on Tuesday, tomorrow. Hopefully Jean Dunford and Jean Williams are feeling a little bit under the weather, so we hope that they're feeling better, and they will be at the helm of Wake Up with Toastmasters tomorrow. So I want to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for checking in, or for at least looking at us a little bit later. If you have any questions, send me an email, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Good day.